We have a very clear policy. Those who are poor and those families that come from poor backgrounds, and now inclusive of families up to 600,000 income, they will be taken care of. That is clearly enunciated. The second thing that we said is that we've received a number of, let's call them technical proposals, from students, from academics, from universities, from the private sector. We need time to evaluate them. But the essence of those proposals is how do you leverage the fiscus and the private sector resources so that you can find this pool for a policy purpose. The government's position is quite clear. If my children can afford to have their fees paid by me, I must pay them. That's quite clear. So I think the slogan must be differentiated from the practical realities and a pragmatic approach where A, we say we recognize your difficulties, B, we know that certain shifts are required in terms of either policy or thresholds or accommodating certain concerns. C, we found money in February this year. D, we found money now to look at this particular situation. And E, there's a longer term set of issues that we need to take care of. And that might take a few weeks or a month or two as we evaluate those proposals. The aim ultimately is to relieve the pressure on poor students and make sure they get access. But the other point that comes through in this debate is that you can't look at higher education as an isolated thing. We need to look at the education system as a whole. There's a huge constituency of people in the academia and elsewhere who would also say, put similar effort into early childhood education. Because if you do that, in generations to come, you wouldn't have many of the difficulties you're having today. So when we take government's commitment to education as a whole, I just don't have the number, it's a formidable number, but the distribution in that system to different sectors of the system is something that we need to look at in a balanced kind of way. We need to look after our children and ensure that those who are 4, 5, 6 years old today, in 10 years' time, have a very different life prospect from the 15 and 16-year-olds today. That's the level of involvement we want. We don't want stone throwing and burning and destruction. What you want is constructive ideas, however they have been thought through, wherever they actually come from, because that is a way of all of us becoming part of the solution, right? Rather than just being critical of one another and then saying you're not doing enough or you're not doing enough. Become part of the solution, add your bit. It could be 10 Rand donation to somebody on the one side. It could be a 10 million Rand donation to somebody else to start a bursary fund somewhere. It could be ideas which will magically take us out of this corner and take us in a new kind of direction. And I think there are more South Africans of goodwill on many of the issues that we are talking about than otherwise. There are the few who think that, for example, downgrades don't matter, doesn't matter if this happens, we'll have a better political climate to rabble-rouse, and so on and so on. That's reckless and something that should never be allowed in South Africa. But if that factor is to be contained, then the majority sensible people in South Africa need to move. They need to become participants in the process of finding solutions to the problems of the majority, not just our individual families.